The political principles at the root of utopias often result in negative consequences for inhabitants because of at least one fatal flaw. And it usually, I believe, revolves around a system or systems of controlling the population in one way or another. Dystopian governments are sometimes ruled by a fascist or communist regime or dictator. The dystopian government's establishments often have protagonists or groups that lead a resistance to enact change within their society, just like in V for Vendetta. And if you've seen it, you probably were watching it at a time in your life when you didn't notice the excessive knife sounds whenever a knife was... Anyways. Dystopian political situations are depicted in novels such as We, Parable of the Sower, Darkness at Noon, 1984, Brave New World, The Handmaid's Tale, The Hunger Games, Divergent, Equilibrium, Fahrenheit 451, and films like Metropolis, Brazil, Battle Royale, FAQ, Frequently Asked Questions, Soylent Green, Logan's Run, and The Running Man. And I misspoke. Equilibrium was a film. As you can probably tell, many of these dystopian novels are now movies. There's several archetypes that such societies tend to follow. A theme like the dichotomy of planned economies versus free market economies. A conflict found in Anne Rain's Anthem and Henry Kuttner's short story, The Iron Standard. Another example is in the film Rollerball, which was an awful, terrible movie. Both versions of Rollerball were pretty bad. 1984 featured black markets with goods that are dangerous and difficult to obtain, and the characters may be at the mercy of the state-controlled economy, or just the state, if they are found to possess any of this contraband. Kurt Vonnegut's Player Piano depicts a dystopia in which the centrally controlled economic system has indeed made material abundance plentiful, but deprived the mass of humanity of meaningful labor. Virtually all work is menial, unsatisfying, and only a small number of the small group that achieves education is admitted to the elite and its work. Now, I haven't seen or read this one, but it is on my list. It sounds similar to the situation in Appleseed, an anime, Matt Walsh's favorite medium. In the movie, the majority of the population are robots, and they're designed to make a city's inhabitants live in abundance, but without purpose. And the movie starts off with a woman's suicide, and it's highlighted to show that the population has lost its humanity or a reason to be alive. In Tanith Lee's Don't Bite the Sun, there is no want of any kind. Only unabashed consumption and hedonism, leading the protagonist to begin looking for a deeper meaning to existence. So, very similar stories there. Even in dystopias where the economic system is not the source of the society's flaws, like Brave New World, the state often controls the economy. In Logan's Run, starring Michael York, the main character, like in many of these dystopian stories, is tasked with infiltration and destruction of any and all that would oppose the state. Initially, the new idea will frighten, and eventually they agree with this new idea, which makes them an enemy of the state. Kind of like what happened in Equilibrium. Other works feature capitalism as the root of the dystopia, where privately owned and unaccountable large corporations have replaced the government in setting policy and making decisions. Social media, Apple, Google, Facebook, Instagram, Meta, and until recently, Twitter. They manipulate, infiltrate, control, bribe, and are contracted by, and function as the government. This is seen in novels Jennifer Government and Orcs and Crake, in the movies Alien, Avatar, RoboCop, Visioneers, Idiocracy, Soylent Green, WALL-E, and, of course, Rollerball. RoboCop's protagonist and antagonist were both created by a private company that the police in, I think it was Detroit, employed this private company. Corporate republics are common in the cyberpunk genre, as in Neil Stephenson's Snow Crash and Philip K. Dick's Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, as well as Blade Runner, which is based on Philip K. Dick's novel. And Blade Runner, the Harrison Ford version, was really good. It was slow but good. The ending was a little confusing, and I'm not going to spoil a 40-year-old movie. Yes, 1982. It's 40 years old now. In the 1931 novel Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, a class system is prenatally determined with alphas, betas, gammas, deltas, and epsilons, with the lower classes having reduced brain function and special conditioning to make them satisfied with their positions in life, such as oxygen and nutrient deprivation while the fetus is developing in a test tube. It's a really dark vision of the future. Outside of this society, there also exist several human settlements that exist in the conventional way, but which the class system describes as savages, meaning they aren't part of the club. In Ypsilon Minus by Herbert W. Frank, people are divided into numerous alphabetically ranked groups, similar to Brave New World. In the film Elysium with Matt Damon, the majority of Earth's population on the surface lives in poverty with minimal access to healthcare and are subject to worker exploitation and police brutality, while the wealthy live above Earth in a heaven. In luxury with access to technologies that cure all diseases, reverse aging, and regenerate body parts. It was an okay movie. Meh. Written a century earlier, the future society depicted in H.G. Wells' The Time Machine has started in a similar way to Elysium. The workers co-signed to living and working in underground tunnels while the wealthy live on a surface made into an enormous, beautiful garden. Something like that. What was that? Demolition Man was similar to that. You got all these people living underground, and the people above ground are super happy. But over a long time period, the roles were eventually reversed. The rich degenerated and became a decadent livestock regularly caught and eaten by the underground cannibal Morlocks. Is this where we got the phrase, eat the rich? Brave New World and Fahrenheit 451 had eradicated the family and keep it from re-establishing itself as a social institution. In Brave New World, where children are reproduced artificially, the concepts of mother and father are considered obscene. Logan's Run, they produced their children artificially as well, and there were many things that were seen as obscene. Religious groups play the role of the oppressed and oppressors. In Brave New World, the establishment of the state included lopping off the tops of all crosses as symbols of Christianity to make them capital T's, as a symbol for Henry Ford's Model T. Margaret Atwood's novel The Handmaid's Tale takes place in a future where the U.S. under a Christian-based theocratic regime. One of the earliest examples of this theme is Robert Hugh Benson's Lord of the World, about a futuristic world where Marxists and Freemasons led by the Antichrist have taken over the world, and the only remaining source of dissent is a tiny and persecuted Catholic minority. In the Russian novel We, by Yevgeny Zamyatin, first published in 1921, people were permitted to live out of public view twice a week for 1 hour, and are only referred to by numbers instead of names. Using numbers instead of names also appears in the later unrelated film THX 1138. It was a George Lucas film, and it's not very good. It's not Star Wars. It's nowhere close to Star Wars, okay? Not even the prequels. In some dystopian works, society forces individuals to conform to radical egalitarian social norms that discourage or suppress accomplishment or even competence as forms of inequality, meaning you aren't allowed to do better than anyone else. You need to be average, and to do better than average is punishable. To do worse than average is punishable. Violence is prevalent in many dystopias, often in the forms of war, but also in urban crimes led by predominantly teenage gangs, like Clockwork Orange, or rampant crime met by blood sports, Battle Royale, Running Man, Hunger Games, Divergent, The Purge. I know there's more. Dystopias are commonly urban and frequently isolate their characters from all contact with nature. Sometimes they require their characters to avoid nature altogether, and walks are sometimes regarded as dangerously antisocial in Fahrenheit 451 and in a Bradbury short story, The Pedestrian. In C.S. Lewis's That Hideous Strength, science coordinated by the government is directed toward control of nature and the elimination of natural human instincts. They also did this in Equilibrium, where on a set schedule you had to inject yourself with an emotion suppressant. So all mankind is without emotion, except for the people that miss their dose and they start to feel things. And because they've been deprived of feeling things their whole lives, this new sensation of feeling is overwhelming and they never want to dose again. In Brave New World, the lower class is conditioned to be afraid of nature, but also to visit the countryside and consume transport and games to promote economic activity. Lois Lowry's The Giver shows a society where technology and the desire to create a utopia has led humanity to enforce climate control on the environment, as well as to eliminate many undomesticated species, and to provide psychological and pharmaceutical repellent against human instincts. Like I was saying, Equilibrium. Shoot yourself, inject yourself with this so you don't have human instincts or emotion. E.M. Forrester's The Machine Stops depicts a highly changed global environment which forces people to live underground due to an atmospheric contamination. This sort of isolation caused by external toxic hazard is later used by Hugh Howey in his series of dystopias of the Silo series, and many post-apocalyptic video games, let me tell you. Excessive pollution that destroys nature is common in many dystopian films, such as Matrix 1, 2, and 3, RoboCop 1 and 2, WALL-E, April and the Extraordinary World, and Soylent Green, as well as in video games like Half-Life 1, 2, and Part 1 and 2. There's a few green fictional dystopias, Michael Carson's short story The Punishment of Luxury, and Russell Hoban's Ridley Walker. The Ridley Walker story is set in the aftermath of a nuclear war, where technology has been reduced to the level of the Iron Age. Contrary to the technologically utopian claims, which view technology as a beneficial addition to all aspects of humanity, technological dystopias concerns itself with the focus largely, but not always, on the negative effects caused by new technology. The typical dystopian claims. Technologies reflect and encourage the worst aspects of human nature. Oh, the computer did it, not me. It's the algorithm that did it, not me. This quote explains that people begin to not only blame the technology for the changes in lifestyle, but also believe that technology is omnipotent. It also attempts to absolve the programmer of any and all responsibilities and fault. Technologies harm our interpersonal communication, relationships, and communities. There's a decrease in communication within family members and friend groups due to an increased time in technology use. Virtual space misleadingly heightens the impact of real presence. People resort to technological medium for communication nowadays, such as social media addictions, which is covered in the Social Dilemma documentary. Technologies reinforce hierarchies. They concentrate knowledge and skills. They increase surveillance and erode privacy. They widen inequalities of power and wealth, and they give up control to the machines. The professional designers remystified the computer so it wasn't so readable anymore, and users have to depend on special programs built into the software that was incomprehensible for normal users. Okay, the unforeseen impacts of technology are negative, and they eventually shrink the economy, not grow it. There's more efficiency, and choices can harm our quality of life by causing stress, destroying jobs, and making us more materialistic. In his article, Presto Changeo, technological dystopian James Gleick mentions the remote control being the classic example of technology that does not solve the problem it was meant to solve. The ability and ease of switching channels by remote control only increases the distraction of the viewer, meaning it is only expected that people will become more dissatisfied with the channel that they're on, that they're watching. If you have a remote, well, instant gratification, we no longer have to watch that, change it. New technologies can solve problems of old technologies or just create new problems. Modern TVs, for instance, now, and I'm going to use that remote example, have become so complicated that the TV is unusable without a remote, meaning if you lost your remote or broke your remote, no more TV. It almost seems like politicians today are using these dystopian works as a blueprint or an instruction manual to create these dystopian realities. So much of what is going on today with the suppression of free speech online, YouTube deciding what you cannot say. If you can't have a dissenting opinion when it comes to certain things now online. Twitter seems to be the only place online where you can have free speech apart from your own website. The more control we give up as humans to anyone or anything, the closer we are to one of these dystopian realities that authors even 100 years ago were predicting. And we're increasingly living closer and closer to a dystopia. And I don't think a utopia will come of it. Yeah, that's it. I'm done.